Community, we are very fortunate to have a devotee, Rukmini Devi Dāsi. Srila Prabhupada had a god brother, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. And Rukmini was very, very fortunate to receive the holy name, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra from him. It is our great fortune. Rukmini is with us today here. And she grew up in Denver. She was part of the Hare Krishna movement from her very young age as a little child. She went on to do her PhD in mathematics from UC Berkeley. And after that, she's been working here in Columbus for the last couple of years. And we hope that we will continue to have her association. She's looking at different options in her career right now, but we hope. Today the topic is Congregational Chanting of the Holy Name. So Rukmini Prabhu is
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prem Vilas Prabhu, for inviting me to speak and for that kind and overly generous introduction. I might not have agreed if I remember the introductions, then I would might not have agreed to speak. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurudeva Namo Vishnupadaya Shri Gaura Priya Murtaye Srimate Bhakti Vallabh Tirtha Goswami Niti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Gaura Prishthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Pramodaya Puri Goswami Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashchatta Deshatarine. So thank you all for coming, and thanks to Prem Sindhu Prabhu for leading that wonderful kirtan that we just participated in. So the topic of today's talk is Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, which we just participated in. I see some new people, so I'd like to ask the audience for some questions. So can anyone tell me what is the definition of the word kirtan?
Glories of God.
Glories of God, yes. Singing the glories of God. So kirti is fame, and kirtan is what produces fame. So celebrating or glorifying. And so literally it means celebrating or glorifying somebody. And whom should we glorify? If we have some material motivation or some ulterior motive, then we might flatter someone, or we might glorify this person or that person. But if our heart is free from any contamination, if we're unmixed in material motives, then the kirtan or glorification naturally runs towards the Lord, just as a river flows to the ocean. And the reason is that the Lord is the one who is full in all opulences. So in the Vishnu Puran, Parashar Muni has given the definition of Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, as Aishwaryasya Samagrasya Viryasya Yashasah Shriya Jnana Vairagya Yoshchaiva Shanna Bhaga Itingana. So he has given the 6 bhagas or opulences. So they are wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. And Bhagavan is one who has these bhagas, the one who has these opulences. And he has them all in full. So anybody can have a little bit of wealth, a little bit of beauty, a little bit of fame. But the person who has all of them in full, that is Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. And so naturally, if we don't have any mixed motive, then the person we'll glorify is the most glorious person, the one who has the most opulences. Now, what about yajna? Has anyone here been to a yajna?
Yeah, we are in a yajna now at present.
Yes, indeed.
Sankirtan yajna.
Yeah. Any other kind of yajna? Has anyone been to any other kind of yajna?
The fire sacrifice.
Yeah, so fire sacrifices is what people maybe conventionally think of as yajna. And it is a yajna that has been going on from time immemorial. So for instance, probably many people have gotten married and had a fire sacrifice at that time. So does anyone remember a famous yajna in the Ramayana?
Ashwamedha.
Yeah, Ashwamedha is one, and actually, that's the one that I was thinking of. Naveen Krishna Prabhu said the Putra Kamistri Yajna. So Dasharath, the king, was old and had various queens, but he didn't have a son for a long time, so he was not happy. So then the sages told him that you perform a yajna, and then this was long ago in the Treta Yuga. So he was being a king. He had all kinds of wealth and all kinds of opulences, and he got together all the ingredients. And they also got a special sage to perform this yajna, Rishishunga Muni, and they performed a fire sacrifice in order to please the Lord Vishnu, and in order to obtain a son. So this was one, and he did indeed obtain, the best possible son, Sri Ram and his brothers. So in Vedic times, people performed yajnas in order to. There were various yajnas which were prescribed in order to get various fruits, or also as part of dharma. So dharma is the duty of a human being. So, for instance, in the Dharma Shastras, it's prescribed that every married couple is supposed to. There's the Grihya Sutras. There's certain yajnas that are prescribed. So, in ancient times, people performed these yajnas in terms of fire sacrifices. And those fruits that they might get. So this was an example where someone wanted to get a son. Someone might want wealth, someone might want cows, someone might want land, someone might want rain. So all of those fruits are sort of an indirect way of getting something. There's something that everybody wants. What is it that everybody wants for which they are trying to get all these different means? Happiness, yes, ananda. So, this that we just performed, this kirtan, this is the yajna, as this gentleman said, this is the Sankirtan yajna for this age. So what is the source of happiness? So the Taittiriya Upanishad says, Raso Vaisaha, Rasam Yevayam Labdvanandi Bhavati. So he himself is rasa. The Supreme Lord is himself rasa, the taste or mellow of a particular relationship. And certainly one who achieves this rasa becomes anand, filled with bliss. When we were engaging in this kirtan, we directly experienced that bliss. So instead of these indirect paths of trying to obtain various fruits by performing a fire sacrifice and then thinking that we'll be happy by those fruits, we directly experience bliss. Why do we experience bliss in the name? Because, as the Padma Puran states, Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta Vinatvan Nama Namino. The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It is like a touchstone. It can give us our heart's desire, and it is the complete form of all transcendental mellows, of ras. It is the embodiment of ras itself, and it is completely pure and fulfilling it. And this is because there is no difference between the name and the named. So when we are associating with this holy name, then we're directly experiencing that ras, which gives us ananda, which gives us bliss. And so we are engaging in this Sankirtan Yajna. And this is why Arjuna said when he saw the universal form of Sri Krishna, that by singing your glories, the whole world becomes joyful and also becomes attached to you. He says in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this kirtan is a method for directly attaining bliss that has already been recommended in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, in particular, so I mentioned that in previous ages, people did different kinds of sacrifices, but that results that people got, all the results that people got by performing different sacrifices in previous ages, they can get in this age by performing kirtan. So you may have heard probably that there's different cycles of ages. And so long ago there was the Satya Yuga, also known as the Krita Yuga, which was the golden age. Then Treta Yuga, which we might call the silver age. The Dwapar Yuga was the bronze age, and the Kali Yuga is the iron age. And this Kali Yuga, so this cycle of ages, there's a progressive deterioration. So people lose their memory. They lose their ability to do things very carefully. They lose their ability to do things meticulously. And also they become full of anxiety and uncertainty. But it says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Kadar dosha nidhe rajan asti hyeko mahan guna kirtana deva krishnasya mukta bandha parang prajet. So Srila Shukadeva Goswami is speaking here. This is from the 12th chapter, 3rd canto, 12th canto, 3rd chapter, verse 51. Srila Shukadeva Goswami is telling King Parikshit that this Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, dosha nidhe. But asti hyeko mahan guna, there is one great good quality, one virtue of this Kali Yuga, and that is kirtana eva, just from kirtan. Only from kirtan of Krishna's kirtan, mukta bandha, one can be free from bondage, and one can go to the supreme abode, one can get to the supreme goal. And then in the next verse he says, Krite yad dhyayato Vishnu, Tretayam yajato makhai, Dvapare paricharyayam, kalutad dhari kirtanat. So he says, Krite is also another name of Satya Yuga. Whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu. So in Satya Yuga, the dharma of that yuga was to meditate. Tretayam yajato makhai. So in Treta Yuga, the dharma of the yuga, the duty that everyone was supposed to perform was to do yajna. And we just gave examples of yajna from Treta Yuga. Dvapare paricharyayam. So that in Dwapar Yuga, which was the previous age, the most recent age, the dharma of the yuga was to worship Krishna in the deity form, to do archan of Krishna. But what could have been obtained by all those means in all those yugas, kalotad Hare Kirtanat. By all of that can be obtained in this age, Kali Yuga, by Hare Kirtan. Now, if you think about it, those things were actually all much more difficult. So in the, I think it's in the Brihadaranyaka Purana, it says, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Aiva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyatha, which says, Hare Nam, the holy name, the holy name, the holy name. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Aiva Kevalam is the only way. In Kalo, in Kali Yuga, Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way, Gatir Anyatha, to obtain the goal. So in this verse, Harinam is repeated 3 times. So, and also Nastyeva is also repeated 3 times. So in those 3 previous yugas, there were 3 other practices. So in the Satya Yuga, there was the practice of meditation, dhyan. And so that people would spend thousands of years in meditation. And that not even for the supreme goal, but just for some intermediate boon, like Hiranyakashipu did thousands of years of penance because he wanted to become very powerful, and Bhagirath did thousands of years of penance because he wanted the Ganga to come to the earth. So people were able to do thousands of years of meditation, and for us, if we want to sit for 20 minutes and concentrate, it already becomes very difficult, because in Kali Yuga our powers of concentration have diminished. So that's Harinam Nastyeva. There's no other way but Harinam. So that first method is not present. Then the second method is by the fire sacrifice, the yajna. So in the Treta Yuga, so people could assemble many things. So to do a fire sacrifice properly, it takes many ingredients. All those ingredients have to be completely pure. It also takes a number of different priests. All those priests have to be completely pure from birth, and they also have to be engaging in the practicing the Vedic hymns constantly, and every syllable has to be pronounced exactly correctly and with the correct intonation. And they also have to be very pure in their lives, in their dealings. And so basically, it's very. Besides being, it's very pure. It's very technical, and it also requires a lot of wealth. And so to do this in this age is again very difficult and pretty much impossible, because a small mistake in performing that fire sacrifice can mean that the results will not be obtained. So then that's the second instance of Harinam Nastyeva. There's no other way except Harinam. So what could have been attained in those ages by this very complicated and big production? Like even today, if we do something that is very difficult and requires a lot of coordination and a lot of effort, we call it a yajna. What could have been done in those ages by so much effort and coordination, that can be obtained in this age only by Harinam. And then in the next age, the third age, Dwapar Yuga, there was the worship of the deity. And the deity worship, so the deity is very kind and very merciful. So and this is why the Lord comes in the form of the deity is in order to have a personal relationship with us and to exchange personal relations with us. But still, there are some rules involved in deity worship. There also needs to be some purity, and there also needs to be some cleanliness, and there also needs to be kindness to all living beings. All of these things must be present. So again, even to worship the deity completely properly in Kali Yuga is also difficult. Excuse me. Because in this age we are full of faults and are constantly making mistakes. So again, Harinam Nastyeva. There is no other way except Harinam. Now we're still doing all of those things. All of those methods are still going on in Kali Yuga. But we're able to fulfill all those kinds of dharma because in the process of doing those sacrifices or those other methods, we're also doing the Hare Kirtan, and the Hare Kirtan brings the fulfillment. Oh, thank you. So therefore, in Srimad Bhagavatam it's stated, Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishna Sankopangastra Parshana Yajya Sankirtana Prayar Yajantihi Sumedasa. So in this age, Krishna Varnam, pronouncing the two syllables Krishna. So the word Varna sometimes means syllables and sometimes means color. So in this case, Tvisha Akrishna. His complexion is Akrishna, is not Krishna, it's golden. And Sangopangasta Parshanam, with his associates and weapons and the incarnation for this age brought the Sankirtan Yajna. the sacrifice known as Sankirtan, yajantihi sumedasa. So the people of good intelligence, or spiritual intelligence, they will do yajna, they will worship with this sacrifice. And the person who's being referred to is the person who brought this dharma. In each age, in different ages, there is an incarnation of the Lord who brings the dharma for that age. And in this age, the incarnation is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His deity is over there. There's two deities, so standing, well, if you're looking on your left is Lord Nityananda, and on your right is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He came 500 years ago, and he was golden in complexion, and he was the Lord himself who came as his own devotee. So he only rarely manifested his supremacy. He would try to hide his supremacy as the Supreme Lord. He came as the Lord to demonstrate how to do the dharma of this age, how to do Harinam Sankirtan. So he said also, so in those previous ages when people were doing Vedic sacrifices, so as I mentioned that there had to be highly trained Brahmins who who were pretty much dedicated to only doing that and were doing that all their life. So one thing that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did is he brought this Harinam Sankirtan, which is not limited to people of a particular time or place. It's not limited to people who are born in a Brahmin family. It is not limited to people of India. It can be done by men or women, or people born in India or people born in America, people all over the world. And it's so anyone who is of good intelligence, sumedasa, will accept this Harinam Sankirtan. So in those, so as I mentioned, in those previous ages, there were these fire sacrifices, and Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, would accept the results of the sacrifice. So one of his names is that he is Saptajiva, the seven-tongued, meaning the seven tongues of the sacrificial fire, the sacrificial flame. They're seven tongues which have seven colors, which is if the sacrifice is done completely correctly, then those seven colors manifest, which is quite wonderful. So in this age, there are also seven benefits to Harinam Sankirtan. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave 8 verses of instruction, of which one of them, the first one, describes these 7 benefits. So I'll say that verse. Chetu darpana bhajanam havamaha davagni nirvapanam shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam Purnamrita aswadanam sarvatma snapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So this verse describes, so it ends with Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. May there be supreme victory to Shri Krishna Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So this verse describes these 7 benefits, and so I'll describe them. And if you follow, you'll find that these benefits are kind of watery. So because we're so the fire is purifying, the fire of the sacrificial fire. But because we're so we're full of faults in this age, the fire of Sankirtan is actually is more merciful. It's full of mercy, and it's gently purifying us. So the first one is Chetu Darpana Bhajanam. It cleanses the mirror of the heart. So our hearts are covered by material contamination, material desires, which have and material tendencies and propensities, which have accumulated over many lifetimes. But this Harinam Sankirtan very gently cleanses and purifies our hearts and unties the knots in our hearts. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So, and quenches the blazing fire of material existence, which we're suffering. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. So it causes the white lotus of good fortune to bloom, just as the moon causes this white lotus of all auspiciousness to bloom. Vidyavadhu Jivanam. And it is the life and soul of all knowledge. Vidya is Vidyavadhu, it's the bridegroom of that knowledge. Anandambhuti Vardhanam. The ocean of bliss is growing. And Pratipadang Purnamrita Aswadanam. We are tasting full nectar at every step. And Sarvatma Snapanam. It is, so Sarvatma means, it can mean both our entire body, mind, and soul, or it can mean all the people who are engaged, all the living beings are being bathed. And that's what's happening with Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, with this congregational chanting of the holy names. So as I mentioned, this chanting, it's not limited to anyone, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Prithibite ache jato nagaradi gram, sharvatra prachar hoibe mornam. In every town and village that is spread across the earth, in every one the preaching of my name will be heard. And so to fulfill this prophecy, so Prem Vilas Prabhu had mentioned the spiritual teacher of Srila Prabhupada is Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted this prophecy to be fulfilled, this Sankirtan Yajna to be shared across the entire world. So when Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, whose deity form is on the left, your left there, sitting there, when he met his spiritual master, his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in 1924, then his guru told him, you know English well, why don't you go and preach this Harinam Sankirtan in the West? So he wanted this prophecy to be fulfilled, and he knew that Srila Prabhupada would be able to fulfill it. So at that time, Srila Prabhupada had just gotten married, and his wife was pregnant. So he was engaged in household life for some time. But he did surrender at the lotus feet of his spiritual master, and he took that instruction to heart very seriously. And so when his family life was complete and his children were all grown up, he took sannyas, the renounced order of life, and then he went to Vrindavan, which is where the birthplace of Lord Krishna, and he began contemplating very seriously and with great sincerity of heart how to perform this instruction, this order that his spiritual master had given him. And he preached a little bit. He did some preaching within India. He formed a league of devotees, and he also started a magazine, Back to Godhead, which he was distributing. And he began translating the Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. He had also translated the Bhagavad Gita into English, but that manuscript was stolen for various reasons. But he did translate the Srimad Bhagavatam, which the scripture which explains in detail how to engage in devotion to the Lord, of which the primary process is Sankirtan. And then, he was getting very old. So he was approaching 70 years of age, and he was still continuously thinking, how could he possibly carry out this order? It seemed almost impossible. So he found one person who had a son who lived in America. The son's name was Gopal Agarwal. So he met Mr. Agarwal's father, and so he asked him, "Can your son help me to get to America? Can he help me with a visa?" And this person was very surprised, because he was thinking, oh, you're a saintly person. Why do you want to go to America? But despite being surprised, he was a pious person, And he did get his son to get him a sponsorship to come to America. So this was a little over 50 years ago. There was the Immigration Reform Act of 1965 had allowed, made it easier for people to from India to come to the West. And then the other thing was, how would he get passage? So he was a monk. He was a sannyasi. He was completely poor. He had no means. So he asked this lady, Sumati Morarji, who owned a shipping company, the Scindia Shipping Company. He asked her to give him passage on one of her ships. And at first she refused because she said, you know, I have a shipping line, but it's not a passenger shipping line. I have freight. I ship cargo. First of all, the voyage itself will be very difficult for you, and then in America it's very cold. You're a very old man. You know, I'll be responsible for killing you by sending you there. How can I do this? But Srila Prabhupada was so determined to fulfill the order of his guru that he did nevertheless finally convince her. And so at the age of 69, he took this passage on the Jaladuta, which was, as I mentioned, a cargo ship. And the voyage was so difficult, the crossing was so difficult, that he had 2 heart attacks aboard this ship. And so most people would have thought, okay, well, this clearly isn't working out. Maybe I should just go home. But despite this, he wrote poems to Krishna, which are very beautiful, which were found after his disappearance, after he left this world, stating that he didn't know how he would be able to fulfill his guru's order, but he asked for Krishna's help. He said that you Krishna, you please help me to fulfill this order. So then he did arrive in 1965, and then in 1966, so a little over 50 years ago, he started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And so this is also known as the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON. And this movement exists specifically for propagating this Sankirtan, the Yuga Dharma, the Sankirtan, which is the congregational chanting of the holy name. And so we chant, so Sankirtan, so the word kirtan, as we said, means glorifying the Lord, and Sankirtan means glorifying together. So san is a prefix meaning together, and it also means samyak, so it's complete. So the kirtan becomes complete when we all do it together. And it is said, Prahlad Maharaj has said in the Brihan Naradiya Purana that what the benefit that one gets by chanting softly, one gets 100 times more benefit by chanting loudly. So by chanting loudly in congregation, we all benefit, and the ras that descends, it descends through our pure hearts, and because so even though my heart is still full of many impurities, because I'm in the kirtan with these devotees who are more advanced than me, then they bring the kirtan, that ras, and we all benefit together. And then we not only benefit ourselves, but we benefit others when we chant loudly. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about the holy name, and that's also benefiting me. And I would like to take any questions that there may be at this time. Yes?
At the end of every puja that we do, there's a line that we say, in case we did something wrong with the puja, please forgive us.
Yes.
So you spoke a lot about not doing in Kali, not doing a proper puja, not doing proper prayers. I mean, how do you believe that, you know, in doing something in good faith, we do it right? We don't do all the mantras correctly, we don't do everything correctly, but it's how bad is it when you're talking about the yajna and doing all these things?
It's not that it's bad. It's that we don't necessarily get the desired result. But
What do you mean by desired result, though?
Well, generally a yajna or a puja is done either to so for instance, why do you do a puja?
I mean, I do it for mind clarification. I do it. I mean, I can do it for a million reasons. For something I want, for
Yeah.
something to purity of mind, for just
Mhm.
because it could be any reason. But I don't necessarily. I'm not always asking for something from God.
Yes, it's also a dharma.
Yeah.
So a dharma is something that it's also our duty to do.
Yeah.
So yes, so it is true that it's not a bad thing to do those pujas, but like you say, we're asking for forgiveness because we know that we're imperfect. So part of asking for forgiveness is it also at the end of the pujas. Usually it says that the Lord is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. So we usually speak the name of the Lord also when we're doing that. And all pujas are sort of are fulfilled. We actually chant during the puja itself. We chant Harinam Sankirtan during the puja. So that completes the yajna, and it also is itself a yajna. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, I get it. Does. Thank you.
Say something.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So if you go to if you have a disease and you go to a pharmacy and you say, give me medicine, you have so many medicines here. The first thing the pharmacist will say, where is your prescription? Right? What if you have a serious disease, they'll ask you for a prescription. So there are so many, as she was describing, there are so many different ways of self-realization for different ages. The prescribed way for self-realization in this age is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And it is described, iti shodashakam namnam kali kalmasha nashanam nato paratara upaya sarva vedeshu drishyate. So the 16 words, sword means 16. The 16 words, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Because we are very disqualified, the process is made very simple, and that is the prescribed medicine for our disease in this age of Kali. So while we can do other things, but as she was saying, it should be accompanied by the chanting of the holy names. So that makes it kind of perfect.
Any other questions or comments? Right, thank you very much for your attention.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhakta